My name is Frank Lawson, and I've spent 15 years investigating the darkest corners of human nature. I've tracked serial killers, exposed corruption, and brought justice to the forgotten. But nothing prepared me for what I found at Maplewood Retirement Home. This is a story about trust. About the people we place our loved ones with when they can no longer care for themselves. About the fine line between mercy and murder. And about how the most dangerous predators are often the ones we never suspect. It started with a phone call. A young man named David Chen called my office on a cold November morning in 2020. His voice was shaking. "Mr. Lawson, my grandmother is dead. The police say it was natural causes. But I think someone killed her." I get calls like this more often than you'd think. Grieving families looking for answers that don't exist. Looking for someone to blame because accepting that death just happens, randomly and without reason, is too painful. But something in David's voice made me listen. "Tell me about your grandmother," I said. Her name was Margaret Chen. She was 78 years old. She lived at Maplewood Retirement Home in Burlington, Vermont. She'd been there for 6 months, ever since her Alzheimer's diagnosis. She was in early stages. Still lucid most of the time. Still herself. "I'm sorry for your loss, David. But what makes you think it wasn't natural causes?" "Because of the voicemail she left me. 3 days before she died." He played it for me over the phone. I still remember every word. The voice was elderly, confused, frightened. "David, honey, it's Grandma. I need to tell you something. I'm scared. There's something wrong here. People are dying. Too many people. And I think someone is stealing my memories." I know that sounds crazy. Maybe I am crazy. But I'm not imagining this. Please, David. Come get me. I don't want to die here. I don't want to forget who I am before I go. The message ended. There was silence on the line. "She died 2 days after she left that message," David said quietly. "In her sleep," they said. "Peaceful." "But David, my grandmother was terrified. And now she's dead. Along with 11 other residents who died in the past 8 months. 11 other deaths. 8 months. That got my attention." "Did you report this to the police?" "Yes. They investigated. They said all the deaths were consistent with natural causes. Advanced age, existing health conditions, dementia. They said it was sad but not suspicious. The medical examiner found nothing unusual. No signs of foul play. No toxicology issues. Natural causes across the board." "Then what do you want from me?" "I want you to find out what really happened. Because I know my grandmother. She wasn't paranoid. She wasn't delusional. If she said something was wrong, something was wrong. And now she's dead, and nobody cares because she was old and sick and people like that die all the time, right? But she was a person, Mr. Lawson. She was my grandmother. She deserved better." I told David I'd look into it. I told him I couldn't promise anything, but I'd review the case. Truth was, I was intrigued. 12 deaths in 8 months in a retirement home wasn't necessarily unusual. But that voicemail. That fear in Margaret Chen's voice. It bothered me. I started with research. Maplewood Retirement Home was a small facility in Burlington, Vermont. 40 beds. Privately owned. Specializing in memory care for Alzheimer's and dementia patients. It had good reviews online. Families praised the staff. Said their loved ones were well cared for. Happy even in their final years. The owner and director was a woman named Dr. Evelyn Cross. 62 years old. Medical degree from Yale. 30 years of experience in geriatric care. By all accounts, she was respected in her field. Compassionate. Dedicated. I pulled the death records. 12 residents had died at Maplewood between February and October 2020. Their names were Dorothy Walsh, 84. Heart failure. Robert Simmons, 79. Stroke. Helen Martinez, 81. Respiratory failure. Carl Brennan, 76. Cardiac arrest. Louise Franklin, 88. Pneumonia. George Patterson, 82. Organ failure. Rita Kowalski, 83. Heart attack. Vincent Rossi, 77. Complications from diabetes. Alice Drummond, 90. Natural causes unspecified. Harold Kim, 75. Cardiac arrest. Margaret Chin, 78. Heart failure and sleep. And one more. Jessica Hartley, 86. She died just 3 days ago. Stroke. 12 people. All over 75. All with existing health conditions. All ruled natural deaths. On paper, there was nothing suspicious. But I've learned to trust my instincts. And my instincts were screaming that something was wrong. I decided to visit Maplewood. Not as a journalist. Not yet. I needed to see the place first. Understand how it operated. Meet the staff. And I needed to do it without raising suspicion. So I became someone else. A nephew. Looking for a place for his elderly uncle. It's easier than you'd think to create a cover story. People want to believe you. Especially when you're polite and well-dressed and asking reasonable questions. I drove to Burlington on a gray November afternoon. The town was picture perfect. Fall leaves, white church steeples, mountains in the distance. The kind of place where nothing bad ever happens. Where people leave their doors unlocked and trust their neighbors. Maplewood sat on the edge of town. A converted Victorian house, painted cheerful yellow, surrounded by maple trees. Hence the name. There was a ramp for wheelchairs, a small garden with benches, and a sign that read, Maplewood Retirement Home, where every day is a gift. I felt sick just looking at it. If I was right, if something sinister was happening here, then that cheerful exterior was the perfect disguise. I walked inside. The entry hall smelled like lavender and floor polish. Classical music played softly from hidden speakers. The walls were decorated with paintings of landscapes. Everything was designed to be soothing, comfortable, safe. A woman approached from an office. Mid-40s, wearing scrubs and a warm smile. Her name tag read, Sarah RN. Hello, can I help you? Yes, I'm Michael Lawson. I called earlier about a tour? For my uncle? Of course. Dr. Cross is expecting you. Please follow me. She led me down a hallway. I noticed everything. The security cameras in the corners. The locked medicine cabinet visible through an open door. The residents in the common room, some watching television, others sleeping in chairs, a few working on puzzles. They all looked old. Fragile. Vulnerable. Sarah knocked on a door marked, Director, and opened it. Dr. Cross, Mr. Lawson is here. The woman behind the desk stood and extended her hand. Dr. Evelyn Cross was tall, elegant, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a white coat over a blue dress. Her handshake was firm. Mr. Lawson, thank you for coming. Please sit down. I sat. Her office was neat, professional. Diplomas on the wall. A bookshelf filled with medical texts. A photo on her desk showing her with an elderly woman, both smiling. Tell me about your uncle, she said. I'd prepared this story carefully. His name is Robert. He's 79. He was diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's 6 months ago. He's been living alone, but it's becoming unsafe. He forgets to eat. Leaves the stove on. We need somewhere he can be monitored. Cared for. Dr. Cross nodded sympathetically. That's a difficult transition for families. But you're making the right choice. Your uncle needs professional care now. Tell me, how advanced is his condition? Early stage. He has good days and bad days. Sometimes he's completely lucid. Other times he forgets where he is. Who people are. That's typical. Alzheimer's is progressive, as I'm sure you know. It will get worse. But here at Maplewood, we specialize in making that progression as comfortable as possible. We focus on dignity, comfort, and quality of life. How many residents do you have currently? We're at capacity. 40 residents. We maintain a 4-to-1 ratio. 4 residents per staff member. That ensures everyone receives personal attention. I read online that you've had some recent deaths. I'm sorry if that's insensitive to ask, but my family wants to understand. It's not insensitive at all. It's a valid concern. Dr. Cross's expression remained calm. Yes, we've had several residents pass away this year. That's the nature of this work, Mr. Lawson. We care for elderly people with serious health conditions. Death is part of the process. But I assure you, every resident who dies here does so peacefully, with dignity, and with proper medical care. Were the deaths investigated? Of course. We notify the families immediately. We call the medical examiner. Everything is documented and reviewed. We've had no findings of negligence or wrongdoing. These were natural deaths of elderly, sick people. She was good. Calm, professional, seemingly transparent. But I noticed something. When she talked about the deaths, her eyes didn't match her words. There was something there. Not quite guilt. Not quite fear. Something else. Satisfaction, maybe? Would you like a tour? She asked. Very much. Dr. Cross led me through Maplewood. She showed me the dining room, where residents were eating lunch. Soft foods, mostly. Soup, mashed potatoes, applesauce. Some residents fed themselves. Others were helped by staff members in scrubs. We visited the activity room, where a small group was doing chair exercises. We saw the library, the TV lounge, and the small chape. Then she showed me the residential wing. Long hallways with rooms on either side. Each door had a name placard and a small window so staff could check on residents. We have private rooms and shared rooms, Dr. Cross explained. Your uncle would likely start in a private room, given his early-stage diagnosis. As the disease progresses, we might recommend moving him to a shared room where he can be monitored more closely. What about medication? How is that managed? We have a full-time pharmacist on staff. Medications are administered by our nurses according to each resident's prescribed schedule. Everything is logged and tracked. And at night? If someone needs help? We have overnight staff. 2 nurses and 3 aides on the night shift. Someone checks on each resident every 2 hours. We have call buttons in every room. If a resident needs assistance, they simply press the button. What if they can't reach the button? What if they fall? We have bed sensors for high-risk residents. If they get out of bed, an alarm sounds at the nurse's station. It all sounded perfectly reasonable. Perfectly safe. But something was nagging at me. Dr. Cross, can I ask about your background? What brought you to this work? She smiled. My mother had Alzheimer's. I watched her decline over 7 years. It was devastating. She forgot who I was. Forgot her entire life. By the end, she didn't even know her own name. After she died, I decided to dedicate my career to helping people like her. To making that terrible journey easier. Less frightening. I opened Maplewood 10 years ago with that mission in mind. That must have been very difficult. Watching your mother forget you. It was the hardest thing I've ever experienced. But it taught me something important. There comes a point where the person you loved is already gone. Their body remains, but their mind, their personality, their memories, everything that made them who they were, it's gone. And what's left is suffering. Confusion. Fear. Sometimes I think death is a mercy at that point. There it was. That word. Mercy. I understand, I said carefully. My uncle is terrified of reaching that point. He's told me he doesn't want to live if he can't remember his life. Dr. Cross looked at me with what seemed like genuine compassion. Many people feel that way. And I understand. Dignity is important. No one should have to suffer through the final stages of this disease if they don't want to. We finished the tour back at her office. She gave me a brochure and a pricing sheet. Think it over, she said. Talk with your family. If you decide Maplewood is right for your uncle, We'd be honored to care for him. I thanked her and left. As I walked to my car, I looked back at that cheerful yellow building. And I knew something was happening inside those walls. Something terrible hidden behind good intentions and compassionate words. I needed proof. And to get proof, I needed to get inside. Not as a visitor. As someone who belonged there. I spent the next week preparing. I researched Evelyn Cross more thoroughly. Her mother, Catherine Cross, had died in 2008 at age 76. Cause of death: complications from Alzheimer's. She'd been in a nursing home in Connecticut for 3 years before her death. I found Catherine's obituary. It mentioned that Evelyn had been her primary caretaker before placement in the facility. Reading between the lines, I sensed years of exhaustion. Burnout. Possibly resentment. Watching someone you love disappear piece by piece will do that. It changes you. Makes you think thoughts you never imagined thinking. I also found something interesting. Maplewood had been audited twice by the state in the past 2 years. Both times for medication irregularities. Nothing major. A few missed signatures on medication logs. Some discrepancies in controlled substance counts. The audits resulted in warnings but no sanctions. Medication irregularities. That was my way in. I contacted David Chin. I need your help, I told him. I'm going undercover at Maplewood. But I need a reason to be there. A role that gives me access. What do you need? Your grandmother participated in a drug trial, correct? Yes. An experimental Alzheimer's medication. It was supposed to slow cognitive decline. Who sponsored the trial? A pharmaceutical company. Neurotech Solutions. Dr. Cross was the local administrator. My grandmother signed up when she first moved to Maplewood. Perfect. I called Neurotech posing as a research auditor. I said there were concerns about data integrity at one of their trial sites and I needed to conduct a site visit. They'd put me in touch with their compliance department. I fabricated some credentials, sent some very official-looking emails, and within 3 days I had authorization to audit Maplewood's participation in the drug trial. I called Dr. Cross. Dr. Cross, this is Frank Lawson from Neurotech Compliance. We're conducting routine audits of our trial sites. I'll need to visit Maplewood next week to review your trial documentation and interview staff. This is standard procedure. Nothing to be concerned about. There was a pause. Of course. When would you like to come? Monday. I'll need access to your medication logs, trial participant files, and I'll need to observe your medication administration procedures. That's fine. I'll have everything ready. She sounded calm. But I'd caught her off guard. She hadn't expected this. And now I'd be inside, with access, and a legitimate reason to ask questions. Monday morning, I arrived at Maplewood with a briefcase and clipboard. I looked the part. Business casual. Serious expression. Official credentials hanging from a lanyard. Dr. Cross met me at the door. Mr. Lawson? Welcome. I have a conference room set up for you. She led me to a small room with a table and chairs. Within minutes, a nurse brought in 3 large binders. Medication logs. Trial participant records. Consent forms. Take all the time you need, Dr. Cross said. I'll be in my office if you have questions. I spent the morning reviewing documents. Everything appeared in order. Medications logged. Dosages recorded. Trial participants properly consented. But I was looking for something else. Patterns. Anomalies. The kinds of things that don't stand out unless you're specifically looking for them. And I found them. All 12 deceased residents had been trial participants. All 12 had been receiving the experimental drug. But here's what was interesting. According to the logs, each of them had been taken off the experimental drug 2 weeks before their death. The reason noted was adverse reaction, or participant withdrawal. 2 weeks before death. Every single one. That wasn't a coincidence. I made copies of relevant pages when no one was looking. Then I asked to observe the medication administration process. A nurse named Jennifer took me to the medication room. It was small, organized, with locked cabinets and a computer station. She pulled up a resident's profile on the screen. "This is Howard Miller," she explained. "He's 79. Alzheimer's, moderate stage. He takes 6 medications daily. The computer prompts me when it's time for his dose. I scan his wristband, scan each medication, and the system logs it automatically." "What about the trial medication?" "Same process. Trial meds are stored in this cabinet." She indicated a separate locked cabinet. "Only Dr. Cross and senior staff have the key. We administer those separately from regular medications and log them manually in the trial binder as well as electronically." "Why manually?" "Trial protocol requires paper documentation as backup, in case of system failure." "Makes sense. Has there ever been a problem? A medication error?" Jennifer hesitated. "We're very careful. But occasionally there are discrepancies. Sometimes a count is off by 1 or 2 pills. We report those immediately." "What causes the discrepancies?" "Usually it's human error. Someone forgets to log a dose. Or logs it twice by mistake. Dr. Cross reviews everything weekly to catch errors." I watched as Jennifer prepared medications for several residents. Everything seemed professional. Proper procedure. But I noticed something. When she unlocked the trial medication cabinet, I glimpsed inside. There were several bottles, but one was labeled differently. Not a trial drug. The label read, "Potassium chloride injectable." Potassium chloride. In high doses, it causes cardiac arrest. And if administered carefully, it's nearly undetectable in an autopsy. The heart simply stops. It looks like natural death in an elderly patient. I felt cold. "What's the potassium chloride for?" I asked casually. Jennifer glanced at the cabinet. "Oh, that's for supplementation. Some residents have low potassium levels. Dr. Cross administers that herself. It's not part of the trial." "She administers it personally?" "Yes. She's very hands-on with medical care, especially with the sickest residents." I thanked Jennifer and returned to the conference room. My mind was racing. The pieces were coming together. But I needed more. I needed to understand the why. What was Dr. Cross's motive? It wasn't money. The residents' deaths didn't benefit her financially. The families paid until their loved ones died, then the money stopped. So why kill them? I decided to talk to the staff. Informal conversations. See what I could learn. I found Sarah, the nurse who'd first greeted me, in the break room. "Mind if I join you?" I asked. "Of course not. How's the audit going?" "Good. Everything seems well organized. Dr. Cross runs a tight ship." "She does. She's very dedicated. How long have you worked here?" 3 years. I transferred from a hospital. I prefer this. Slower pace. You really get to know the residents. That must be hard, though. When they pass away. Sarah nodded sadly. It is. Especially when they go quickly. We had a resident, Margaret, she was doing so well. Talking, laughing, eating on her own. Then one night she just went to sleep and didn't wake up. It was peaceful, but still. It's always sad. Does that happen often? Someone seemingly stable dying suddenly? More lately. I've noticed that. We've lost a lot of residents this year. But Dr. Cross says it's just the nature of the disease. Alzheimer's is unpredictable. Someone can seem fine and then decline rapidly. Does Dr. Cross talk about it? The deaths? Sometimes. She always says the same thing. That it's a blessing. That they're at peace now. Free from confusion and fear. She really believes that. That death is a kindness for people who've lost themselves to dementia. There it was again. That word. Kindness. Mercy. Blessing. Dr. Cross wasn't killing for money or pleasure. She was killing out of compassion. Misguided, twisted compassion. She genuinely believed she was helping these people, ending their suffering before it became unbearable. She was a mercy killer. I needed to see it happen. I needed proof. And I needed to stop her before another person died. I checked the trial participant list. There were currently 8 residents enrolled. Of those 8, 1 had been taken off the medication recently. A man named Howard Miller. The same resident Jennifer had used as an example during the medication demonstration. According to the pattern, Howard would die within 2 weeks. Probably sooner. I approached Dr. Cross. "I'd like to stay overnight," I said. "To observe the night shift procedures. Complete the audit properly." She looked surprised. "That's unusual." "I know. But I'm thorough. Neurotech wants a comprehensive report. If it's a problem." No. It's fine. We have a guest room you can use. I'll let the night staff know you'll be observing." That night, I stayed at Maplewood. I was given a small room on the 2nd floor. I didn't sleep. I watched. Waited. The night shift started at 11 p.m. 2 nurses and 3 aides, like Dr. Cross had said. They made their rounds. Checked on residents. Helped them to the bathroom. Administered late-night medications. At 2 a.m., the facility was quiet. Most residents were asleep. The staff gathered at the nurse's station, chatting quietly, doing paperwork. That's when I saw Dr. Cross. She emerged from her office, which was down the hall from the nurse's station. She wore her white coat. She carried a small medical bag. She walked to Howard Miller's room and went inside. The door closed behind her. I moved quietly down the hallway. I stayed in the shadows. The staff at the nurse's station didn't see me. I reached Howard's door and looked through the small window. Howard was in bed asleep. Dr. Cross stood beside him. She opened her medical bag and removed a syringe. She drew liquid from a small bottle. Then she gently lifted Howard's arm and found a vein. She was going to do it. Right now. Right in front of me. I pushed open the door. "Stop." Dr. Cross froze. The syringe was inches from Howard's arm. She turned and looked at me. No surprise in her eyes. No fear. Just a kind of sad resignation. "Mr. Lawson? You're not from Neurotech, are you?" "No. I'm a journalist. And you're under arrest." She smiled sadly. "I'm not under arrest. You're not police. You have no authority here." "Then I'll call the police." "And tell them what?" "That you broke into a resident's room in the middle of the night and found a doctor treating her patient?" "I'm administering a potassium supplement, Mr. Lawson. Howard has a deficiency. This is medical treatment. That's not a supplement. That's a lethal dose. You're going to stop his heart. His heart is already failing. He has maybe 6 months left. 6 months of increasing confusion, fear, and suffering. 6 months of forgetting his children's names, forgetting how to eat, forgetting how to be human. I'm sparing him that. I'm giving him peace. You're killing him. I'm releasing him. There's a difference." She moved to inject Howard. I lunged forward and grabbed her wrist. The syringe fell to the floor. Nurse Sarah appeared in the doorway, alerted by the noise. "Dr. Cross? What's happening?" "Call the police," I said. "Now." Sarah looked between us, confused. Dr. Cross pulled her arm free and stepped back. She looked at Sarah calmly. "Mr. Lawson is not who he said he was. He's a journalist. He's been investigating us. And he's made some very serious accusations. Because you've been killing residents," I said. "Margaret Chen, Dorothy Walsh, all of them. You've been administering lethal doses of potassium chloride, causing cardiac arrest, making it look like natural death." Sarah's face went pale. "That's not true. Dr. Cross would never." "Look at the pattern," I said. "Every resident who died was taken off the trial medication 2 weeks before. Everyone. Then they died suddenly in their sleep. She's selecting victims from the trial participants because it gives her access. She's been doing this for months. They were suffering, Dr. Cross said quietly. All of them. They'd reached a point where there was no coming back. Where every day was confusion and terror. I gave them peace. I gave them dignity. You gave them death. Without their consent. Without their family's knowledge. You played God. Someone had to. The police arrived within 10 minutes. Sarah had called them, shaking and crying. They found the syringe on the floor. They tested the contents. Potassium chloride. Enough to kill. They arrested Dr. Evelyn Cross for attempted murder. Howard Miller, still asleep through all of this, was taken to the hospital for observation. He was fine. Confused about why he woke up there, but physically unharmed. The investigation that followed was extensive. They exhumed bodies. They reviewed every death at Maplewood for the past 2 years. The evidence was overwhelming. Dr. Evelyn Cross had killed 13 people. Not 12. There was one more we'd missed. A resident who died right before the pattern started. A trial run, maybe? Or the first time she'd convinced herself it was mercy. She'd carefully selected victims. Residents with advanced dementia. No close family or infrequent visitors. People whose deaths wouldn't be questioned too closely. People she believed were suffering needlessly. She'd take them off the trial medication, wait 2 weeks so it wouldn't appear connected, then late at night, when the facility was quiet, she'd inject them with potassium chloride. Their hearts would stop. It would look like they'd died peacefully in their sleep. And she'd done it believing she was helping them. In her mind, she was a compassionate doctor ending suffering. She was giving them the dignified death they deserved. She couldn't see that she was a murderer. The trial was long and painful. Families of the victims testified. Some were angry. Others were conflicted. A few even said they understood Dr. Cross's reasoning, even if they couldn't condone her actions. Dr. Cross never showed remorse. She maintained that she'd acted out of compassion. That she'd given mercy to people who were already lost. The jury convicted her of 13 counts of murder. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without parole. Maplewood Retirement Home was shut down. The remaining residents were transferred to other facilities. The yellow Victorian building stands empty now. A for sale sign in the yard. Nobody wants to buy a place where 13 people were murdered, even if it was done in the name of mercy. I think about Evelyn Cross sometimes. About how someone dedicated to caring for people could become their killer. About how good intentions can twist into something monstrous. She watched her mother disappear into Alzheimer's. She saw the suffering. The loss of self. The fear and confusion. And somewhere along the way, she decided that death was preferable. That ending someone's life before they completely lost themselves was an act of love. But it wasn't her choice to make. Those people deserved to live out their days, however many remained, however difficult they were. Their families deserved to say goodbye. To have time. Margaret Chin left that voicemail because she knew something was wrong. She sensed danger. Her mind might have been slipping, but her instincts were sharp. She knew someone was stealing her memories. Stealing her time. Stealing her life. And she was right. David Chin thanked me after the trial. He said it didn't bring his grandmother back, but at least there was justice. At least other families knew the truth. I told him his grandmother saved lives. By leaving that voicemail, by being brave enough to speak up even when she doubted herself, she stopped a killer. If he hadn't called me, Evelyn Cross would still be working. Still selecting victims. Still believing she was doing God's work. The memory thief. That's what the media called her. Because she didn't just take lives. She took the time those people had left. The moments they could have shared with family. The memories they still might have made. She stole futures. Even short, difficult ones. And no amount of good intention justifies that. I've investigated a lot of killers. Some killed for pleasure. Some for power. Some for money. Evelyn Cross killed for mercy. And in some ways, that's the most disturbing kind of killer. Because she truly believed she was right. She truly believed she was helping. It makes you wonder. How many other caregivers have made that choice? How many nursing homes, hospitals, hospices have had someone deciding when suffering has become too much? When life is no longer worth living? How many deaths ruled natural were actually mercy killings by someone who thought they knew better? I don't have answers to those questions. And that terrifies me. What I do know is this. Life is precious. Every moment of it. Even the difficult ones. Even the confusing ones. Even when we can't remember our own names or recognize our children's faces. Because we're still human. We still deserve choice. We still deserve time. And no one, no matter how compassionate they believe themselves to be, has the right to take that away. This is Frank Lawson. And this has been the story of the memory thief. A story about the thin line between mercy and murder. About trust betrayed. And about how the most dangerous monsters are sometimes the ones who believe they're saving us. If you have a loved one in a care facility, visit them. Often. Ask questions. Pay attention. Because the people we trust with our most vulnerable deserve scrutiny. They deserve accountability. And our loved ones deserve protection. Even in their final days. Especially in their final days. Thank you for listening. Until next time, I'm taking you to the darkest corners of true crime. Where serial killers hide behind badges. Where obsession turns deadly. Join me for the Echo Murders, where a killer recreates famous unsolved cases, and I become the next target. You won't want to miss it. Stay safe. Stay vigilant. And never stop asking questions.